Okay, so today we need to discuss another model of argument. There are many different models to choose from, and after you have learned about the different models, you need to decide which one of these models works with my paper and my idea the best. And that does take a little experimentation sometimes. So, today we want to talk about the Rogerian model of argument. Alright, so Carl Rogers was actually a psychologist, not an English professor, not a rhetorician. But what he was concerned about was the fact that people don't really succeed in communication particularly all that well. And he said, what can we do about this? So in his basic model, he begins by talking about the problem of human communication. You know, when you talk to someone, when you're trying to explain something very difficult or important, something that's emotionally charged, like if it's in a relationship, or if it's political or religious, or if it's an actual scholarly argument, like whatever it is, you want to stop and make sure that both sides understand each other. So if you were in a face-to-face conversation, you would say, okay, what I heard you say was, you repeat back what you think the person just said to you, and then they're like, and then they can correct themselves, or they can go, you're right, that's what I meant. And then you're like, okay, so, here's my response, this is what I think. You say what you have to say, and then their job is to go, okay, so I heard you say, and then you outline what you think that you understood, and then they've got the chance to correct it. And in this way, even though it's more time-consuming and it's more painstaking, both sides can make sure they've actually communicated. Because if they're trying to solve a problem, whether it's a problem about funding for new roads in the county, or if it's funding for a new animal shelter, or whatever it happens to be, they've actually communicated and they're genuinely on the same page while they're trying to solve the problem. What does this do if you're actually writing an argument, like in this class? Well, he wants you to think about how to bring people to a middle ground. And this is where people very often go wrong when they're using this argument. Alright? So he says, you don't need to do it Aristotles way. You don't need to do it the ancient Greek way. Your job is not to divide and conquer. Your job is to not charge in and just decimate your enemy. What you need to do, let's pretend you're person A, and there's a person B, you need to bring them to a middle ground and get them to agree on what to do. Now, keep in mind, you do not sacrifice your position. You don't go, well, I really think the best way to handle this is, just to have a fundraiser, but if you don't agree with me, that's okay, and you can believe whatever you want. No, this is a scholarly argument. If you want to win, you still have to put a little force into it. You can't just go, whatever. No. This is still a scholarly argument, folks. You, person A, are helping person B agree to meet in the middle with you and solve the problem in the way that you figured out is likely to produce the best results. Where can we agree, then? Because a lot of the textbooks that discuss this model will talk about the middle ground. Think about it this way, though. Where or how can we agree? Because you have to agree somehow, some way, with your opposition. You have to come to an agreement to solve the problem. And it's your task as the writer to get them to agree to solve it your way. Which means you have to explain how you agree, what you agree on, how this is more beneficial than their solution to the problem. Can we come to some kind of understanding at all? Alright? Let's think about an example. How would this work in real life? Well, one of the great oricians and rhetoricians of the 20th century was Martin Luther King Jr. Alright? He wrote Letter from Birmingham Jail, literally from the jail. He had been arrested because he had a parade in Birmingham without a permit. And it was a civil rights parade that they were doing. And of course, Birmingham, Alabama was not going to give them a parade, a permit for this. No way. So they just did it anyway because they were campaigning for equal rights. So they arrested him for it, threw him in jail, and he's like, okay, I'm going to answer the accusations against me, and I need to move all of you to a middle ground with me, because my goal is for you to agree that equal rights matter. He didn't go, I mean, you can think about it, or, I mean, whatever you want to think. No. Very, very determined to win equal rights. He's not going to back down from this position. That's not the kind of middle ground or gray space that we're talking about here. So he begins, he's specifically answering a published letter in the newspaper by several Christian ministers and one Jewish rabbi. So he's like, hey, I really genuinely believe that you are men of goodwill. And I'm a minister, and all of you are ministers, plus there's a rabbi. And so I think we can agree that we are all God's creation, and that this is God's earth, and that God did not mean for people to be treated poorly. God cares about how his creation is treated. He cares about how people are treated. He starts trying to move them to this ground of where they can agree. Can we at least agree on the basic nature of God? That God is love, that we're all believing in the same God. So, I'm going to answer all your charges, and I'm going to explain why what I did still matters, why it's still the right thing to do, and why we need to move forward into an age of equal rights. This is what God wants, and since we all believe in the same God, you should be able to get onto this middle ground with me. You should be able to agree with me. So he starts this foundation from the very beginning of the letter. He does this at the very beginning, and then he starts using a great deal of ethos by quoting from the Bible, and also quoting famous Jewish scholars for the rabbi, and he begins the process of moving them toward the same space. Did he succeed or not? I don't know, I'm not a historian, I can't tell you. He did know that the letter would be published, and that more than just those ministers and that rabbi would be reading what he wrote. So he hoped that all the Christians and all the Jews who would read this letter could go, oh, right. We should be allied in this cause. We should all care about the same thing. We should be able to go forward together for the sake of all humankind. This is the kind of getting people to a ground where they agree that we're talking about here, not sacrificing your position. Now, he uses other things that you can recognize, Carl Rogers does, from other models of argument. There are some things that are never going to change. You need to make your claim, which is your thesis sentence, and you need to offer evidence or data for your thesis. It's just that you need to really genuinely understand who your audience is. He had the exact names of the men who published the letter, so he could envision clearly and go, okay, so you're Christian ministers and a rabbi. I'm imagining this will be published and more Christians will read it, plus some Jews, and I know who my audience is. First of all, I know you're white, and second of all, I know what your religion is. So I'm a minister, and I'm going there. We're just going to talk about this in religious terms, and I'm going to try to help you see what I see. So you need to know your audience as well. You can't understand how to help them agree with you or how to come to a ground of understanding so you can enact a solution if you don't even understand who they are. And this might take some research on your part to understand who am I really talking to when I talk about this particular topic, which means, your topic matters. Or you might right away go, no, I know exactly who these people all are. I've been watching this go down in the media. I've been watching this my whole life. I know who these people are. And that's great. Keep that in mind while you're writing the argument. And then think about how to get these people to agree, even if it's just on one thing. Alright, so there's a super quick overview of the Rogerian model of argument.